The screaming pierced through the hospital walls at 3 a.m. 8-year-old Emma Morrison writhed in agony as another muscle spasm tore through her paralyzed legs like lightning. Her father, Dr. Richard Morrison, one of Chicago's most renowned surgeons, could only watch helplessly as his daughter suffered from a rare spinal condition that no surgery, no treatment, no miracle of modern medicine could fix. "Daddy, make it stop," she sobbed, her small hands gripping the wheelchair's armrests until her knuckles turned white. For 5 years, since the diagnosis, he tried everything: experimental procedures, renowned specialists, even flying to Switzerland for cutting-edge treatments. Nothing worked. His daughter would never walk. The irony was crushing. He could save strangers' lives with his skilled hands, but couldn't heal the one person who mattered most. But in just 72 hours, everything would change when a homeless 12-year-old boy with calloused hands and wise eyes would walk into their lives and whisper the 4 words that would shatter everything they thought they knew about healing. "Let me try, sir." Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow at the same time we'll bring you another story of courage and discipline from the streets that you won't want to miss. Dr. Richard Morrison's hands trembled as he signed another prescription for his daughter's pain medication. The same hands that had performed over 3,000 successful surgeries were powerless against Emma's condition. Spinal muscular atrophy with complications, a medical nightmare that had stolen his daughter's mobility before her 4th birthday. "The muscle spasms are getting worse," his wife Sarah whispered, dark circles under her eyes telling the story of countless sleepless nights. "She barely ate today." Richard stared through the window of their luxury penthouse, overlooking Lake Michigan. Below, normal children played in the park, running and jumping, simple movements his daughter would never experience. The guilt ate at him daily. He dedicated his life to healing others, but when it came to Emma, he was just another helpless father. "Dr. Morrison?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "There's a situation in the ER. A homeless child was brought in. Severe malnutrition and exposure. They're asking for you specifically."
"I'm not on call tonight," Richard replied, exhaustion weighing down every word.
"Sir, the child, he keeps asking for the surgeon with the sick daughter. He says he knows about Emma." The words hit Richard like ice water. How could a homeless child possibly know about his daughter? They'd kept Emma's condition private, away from the media, away from the prying eyes that followed Chicago's elite medical families. Richard grabbed his coat, his mind racing. As he rushed toward the elevator, Sarah called after him. "Richard, what if this is some kind of scam? What if someone's trying to take advantage of our situation?" But something deep in his gut told him this was different. The desperation in his assistant's voice, the specific mention of Emma. This wasn't coincidence. The elevator doors closed, and Richard descended into a night that would change everything. In the ER, a 12-year-old boy waited, holding secrets that would challenge everything Richard thought he knew about medicine. What could this child possibly know that the best doctors in Chicago didn't? The emergency room buzzed with typical Friday night chaos. But all sound seemed to fade when Richard first laid eyes on the boy. Despite his obvious malnutrition and tattered clothes, there was something unmistakably profound about him. An intelligence that seemed far older than his 12 years. Marcus Williams, the nurse read from the clipboard, found unconscious near the shelter on 5th Street. Hasn't eaten in days, but he refused treatment until he could speak with you. Marcus sat upright on the examination table, his dark eyes meeting Richard's with unsettling directness. "Dr. Morrison," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. "Your daughter Emma can't walk because her spine ain't getting the right signals from her brain. But it ain't about medicine, sir. It's about something else." Richard felt his blood chill. "How do you know my daughter's name? How do you know anything about her condition?" "I know things," Marcus said simply. "My grandmother, she taught me before she passed. She could see what others couldn't see, feel what others couldn't feel. She said I got the gift too." "The gift?" Richard's medical training kicked in, his rational mind rejecting what sounded like superstitious nonsense. "Son, I appreciate whatever you think you're trying to do, but my daughter has a documented medical condition. She's been seen by the best specialists in the world." Marcus slowly reached into his worn jacket pocket and pulled out a small, weathered photograph. Richard's breath caught it, It was a picture of Emma, but not one from any family album. This was recent, taken from outside their building, showing Emma in her wheelchair by the window. "Where did you get this?" Richard demanded, his protective instincts flaring. "I take pictures of people I'm supposed to help," Marcus said quietly. "Grandmother taught me to trust the feelings that come. 3 nights ago, I dreamed about your little girl. She was crying, asking why God made her different. Then I saw myself putting my hands on her back." The rational part of Richard's brain screamed that this was impossible, dangerous even. But another part, the part that had watched his daughter suffer for years while medical science failed, whispered something different. "Mr. Williams," Richard said carefully, "what exactly are you proposing?" Marcus looked directly into Richard's eyes. "Let me try to heal her." The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything Richard had ever believed about medicine, about science, about what was possible in this world. But what if the impossible was exactly what his daughter needed? "You want me to let a homeless child put his hands on my daughter?" Richard's voice echoed through the empty hospital corridor. "Do you understand how insane that sounds?" Marcus remained calm, his young face showing a maturity that unnerved Richard. "I understand you think it's crazy, Dr. Morrison. But your daughter's been suffering for 5 years. How many more specialists you gonna try? How many more experimental treatments that don't work?" The words stung, because they were true. Richard had exhausted every medical option, spent nearly $500,000 on treatments, and traveled to 6 different countries chasing hope. Emma was getting worse, not better. "Even if I believed in whatever you think you can do," Richard said, "I couldn't possibly—" "Take me to her," Marcus interrupted. "Just let me see her. If nothing happens, you call security and never see me again. If something does happen," he shrugged, "then your little girl gets to run and play like other kids." Richard's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Emma's asking for you. Bad night." The message hit him like a punch to the chest. He closed his eyes and saw Emma's face, twisted in pain, asking him why he couldn't fix her like he fixed everyone else. "If I even considered this," Richard said slowly. "And I'm not saying I am. What would you need?" "Nothing," Marcus replied. "Just quiet time with her. Maybe an hour." "And you gotta believe it can work, Dr. Morrison. Doubt blocks the healing." "Doubt blocks the healing?" Richard almost laughed. "Kid, I'm a surgeon. I deal in facts, in evidence, in cutting people open when you could heal them whole," Marcus finished. "My grandmother used to say that. She said doctors forgot that bodies want to heal themselves. They just need someone to remember how." Richard stared at this strange boy, who spoke with such certainty about things that contradicted everything he'd learned in medical school. But then he thought about Emma's latest X-rays, showing no improvement despite months of physical therapy and experimental treatments. What if conventional medicine had reached its limits? What if there was something else? "Dr. Morrison," Marcus said softly, "I know you love your daughter. I can feel it from here. Love like that, it can move mountains. It can definitely heal a little girl's spine." Richard pulled out his phone to call his wife. His hands shook as he dialed. If this went wrong, he could lose his medical license, his reputation, maybe even his daughter's trust. But if it went right, Sarah Morrison stared at her husband as if he'd lost his mind. "You want to bring a homeless child into our home to perform some kind of, faith healing? On Emma?" "I know how it sounds," Richard said, pacing their living room while Marcus waited quietly in the hallway. "But Sarah, what if we're missing something? What if there's more to healing than what they teach in medical school?" "Listen to yourself." Sarah's voice cracked with exhaustion and fear. "Our daughter is in pain every day. We can't risk her safety on some desperate fantasy." From her bedroom, Emma's voice called out weakly, "Mommy? Daddy? Is someone here?" The family looked toward the hallway where Marcus stood, still as stone. His eyes closed as if he were listening to something only he could hear. "She's scared," Marcus said without opening his eyes. "But not of the pain. She's scared you'll stop loving her if she can't get better." Sarah gasped. Just yesterday, Emma had whispered those exact words to her, words she'd never shared with Richard. "How could you possibly know that?" Sarah whispered. Marcus finally opened his eyes. "Because I was scared of the same thing when I was sick. Before grandmother helped me." "You were sick?" Richard asked. "Cancer," Marcus said simply. Doctors said I had 6 months. Grandmother laid hands on me every day for 3 weeks. Tumors disappeared. Doctors called it a miracle, but grandmother said it was just love finding its way through. Richard felt his worldview tilting. That's medically impossible. A lot of things are medically impossible until they happen. Marcus replied, "Can I see her now? The window for healing is getting smaller." Against every instinct screaming in his rational mind, Richard led Marcus toward Emma's room. Sarah followed, clutching her husband's arm. Emma looked up as they entered, her pale face brightening slightly. "Is this the boy who wants to help me?" Marcus approached slowly, his demeanor gentle and respectful. "Hi, Emma. I'm Marcus. Your daddy told me about your back troubles. Can you really help me walk?" Emma asked, her voice small but hopeful. Marcus knelt beside her bed. "I'm gonna try, but I need you to help me. Can you do that?" Emma nodded eagerly. "Close your eyes," Marcus said softly, "and think about running in that park across the street. Think about how good it would feel to chase butterflies and climb trees." As Emma closed her eyes, Marcus gently placed his hands on her lower back. The room fell silent, except for the sound of 3 people barely breathing. Then something extraordinary began to happen. The moment Marcus's hands touched Emma's back, the room seemed to fill with an electric warmth. Richard watched in stunned silence as his daughter's face, which had been twisted with chronic pain for months, began to relax. "It's warm," Emma whispered, her eyes still closed. "Like sunshine inside me." Sarah gripped Richard's arm tighter, her knuckles white. "What's happening?" Marcus remained perfectly still, his hands steady on Emma's spine. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool room temperature. "I can feel the blockage," he murmured, "like a dam in a river. The signals want to flow, but they can't get through." Richard's medical instincts warred with what he was witnessing. There was no scientific explanation for what appeared to be happening. Yet he couldn't deny the visible change in his daughter's condition. "Emma," Marcus said softly, "I want you to think about your legs. Not as broken things, but as sleeping things that just need to wake up. Can you do that for me?" "I think so," Emma replied, her voice growing stronger. For 20 minutes Marcus remained motionless, his breathing deep and steady. The room felt charged, as if the very air had changed composition. Then, gradually, Marcus lifted his hands. "Try to move your toes, Emma," he said gently. Richard held his breath. Emma had lost all sensation below her waist 3 years ago. Every medical test confirmed complete paralysis. Emma's face scrunched in concentration. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, impossibly, her left big toe twitched. Sarah's sharp intake of breath echoed through the room. Richard felt his legs give out as he sank into a nearby chair. "I felt that," Emma whispered in amazement. "I actually felt my toe move." "Good," Marcus said, though his voice sounded strained and weak. "Now try to move your ankle." Emma's foot flexed slightly. Then, more definitively. "This is impossible," Richard breathed. Marcus looked up at him, his young face drawn with exhaustion. "Dr. Morrison, can you help me to a chair? This takes everything I got." As Richard helped the boy to a seat, Emma suddenly gasped. "Daddy, I can feel my legs. They're tingly, but I can feel them." Sarah burst into tears, rushing to her daughter's bedside. "Sweetheart, are you sure?" "Watch this, Mommy," Emma said, and slowly, deliberately, bent her knee. The movement was small, uncertain, but it was there. After 5 years of complete paralysis, Emma Morrison was moving her legs. But as the family celebrated this impossible moment, Marcus slumped forward in his chair, blood trickling from his nose. "Marcus!" Richard rushed to the boy's side. "What's wrong?" Marcus looked up with glassy eyes. "Healing takes life force. Dr. Morrison, to give her back her legs," he swayed dangerously. "I had to give her some of mine." "Call 911, Richard shouted as Marcus collapsed, his small body hitting the floor with a sickening thud. The boy's breathing was shallow, his pulse weak and erratic. "No," Marcus whispered, grabbing Richard's wrist with surprising strength. "No hospitals. Please. They'll just ask questions nobody can answer." Richard's medical training kicked in as he checked Marcus's vital signs. The boy was in serious distress, blood pressure dropping, pulse irregular. Whatever he'd done to heal Emma had clearly taken a massive physical toll. "Marcus, you need medical attention," Richard insisted. But the boy shook his head weakly. "Just need rest," Marcus murmured. "Grandmother warned me this might happen. Said big healings come with big prices." From her bed, Emma watched with growing alarm. "Is he dying because he helped me? Daddy, is Marcus dying because of me?" "No, sweetheart," Sarah said quickly, though her voice betrayed her own fear. "This isn't your fault." But Emma was already trying to get out of bed. For the first time in 5 years, she swung her legs over the side and attempted to stand. Her movements were unsteady, like a newborn foal, but she was moving under her own power. "I have to help him," Emma said determinedly. "If he gave me his strength, maybe I can give some back." "Emma, no!" Richard started to protest, but stopped when he saw the fierce determination in his daughter's eyes, a look he hadn't seen since before her diagnosis. Emma stumbled toward Marcus, her newly awakened legs shaking with the effort. She knelt beside him and placed her small hands on his chest, mimicking what she'd seen him do. "Please get better," she whispered. "Please don't be hurt, because you helped me." Marcus's eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, a small smile crossed his lips. "See? I told you love could move mountains." Gradually, his breathing steadied. Color returned to his cheeks. Within minutes, he was sitting up, though still obviously weak. Richard stared in wonder at both children. How is this possible? Any of this? Marcus looked at him with those ancient eyes. "Dr. Morrison, you spend your whole life cutting people open to fix them. But sometimes, the fixing needs to happen from the inside out. Sometimes, it just takes believing that healing is possible." Emma took her first unsteady steps toward her father, her face radiant with joy and wonder. "Daddy," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm walking. I'm really walking." But as the family embraced in celebration, none of them noticed the black sedan that had been parked across the street all evening, or the figures inside taking photographs through telephoto lenses. Word of tonight's miracle was already spreading through channels that would change everything. 6 weeks later, Dr. Richard Morrison stood before a packed auditorium at Chicago Medical Center, facing the most important presentation of his career. Emma sat in the front row, her legs crossed casually, a simple gesture that still took his breath away. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard began, 6 weeks ago, I would have called what I'm about to share with you impossible. But medical impossibility, I've learned, is often just the limit of our current understanding. The medical community had been buzzing since word leaked about Emma's recovery. Skeptics demanded proof, believers claimed vindication, and everyone wanted answers Richard wasn't sure he could provide. Marcus sat beside Emma, wearing new clothes the Morrison family had bought him. They'd officially become his guardians after learning he had no living relatives. The boy who'd wandered into their lives as a homeless child now lived in their guest room and attended private school. But more importantly, he'd become part of their family. "The neural pathways that had been damaged in my daughter's spine," Richard continued, "show complete restoration. Her muscle tone has returned to normal. By every medical measure we have, she has made a full recovery from a condition that medical science considers irreversible." A doctor in the audience raised his hand. "Dr. Morrison, you're asking us to believe in faith healing? In miracles?" Richard looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "I'm asking you to consider that healing might involve more than just medical intervention," Richard replied. "I'm asking you to consider that the human body's capacity for recovery might be greater than we've imagined, and that sometimes, the key to unlocking that capacity isn't found in a textbook." After the presentation, as the auditorium emptied amid heated discussions and divided opinions, Emma walked over to Marcus. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Helping me, even though everyone thinks you're weird now?" Marcus smiled, the same wise smile that had first captivated Richard in the emergency room. "Emma, I was born to help heal people. Finding your family, becoming part of it, that wasn't the cost of healing you. That was the reward." Emma hugged him tightly. "I love you, brother." "Love you too, sister." Richard watched his children, both of them now, and felt a profound shift in his understanding of what it meant to be a healer. He'd spent years learning to fix bodies with scalpels and sutures. But Marcus had taught him that sometimes, the most powerful medicine wasn't found in any pharmacy. Sometimes, it was simply believing in the impossible. and having the courage to let love find its way through. As they walked out of the hospital together, Emma skipping ahead with the pure joy of a child who could run and play, Richard realized that his daughter hadn't been the only one who'd been healed that night. They all had been, and in a world that often forgot the power of hope, that might just be the most important miracle of all. Sometimes the most profound healing happens not through medicine, but through the courage to believe in what seems impossible. In a world that often divides us, it's the unexpected connections across race, class, and circumstance that remind us of our shared humanity and the extraordinary power of love to overcome any obstacle.